We're going to start with land management in Prince William Sound. First of all, I want to recognize the Prince William Sound Stewardship Foundation, and especially Charlotte Hughes, our executive director, who's really put all this together, and the organizing committee. You'll notice I got some swag on here. We're happy to sell you some if you'd like it. Also, I don't know how to say this, but I think every year we do this, and it's always amazing me the people connection that's almost as important as the place called Prince William Sound. So this opportunity to meet people and make those connections are super important, and we really encourage you to do this throughout the day and on tomorrow, for those of you who will be with us tomorrow. So first of all, land management. Land management is incredibly important. It's under a very stressful time now in our country, but a place that we call Prince William Sound is managed by multiple different organizations, and the Chugach National Forest and the native corporations and the state, and so really happy to sort of give an overview of that. To have Jack Blackwell, who's the Vice President of Lands and Resources at Chugach Alaska Corporation, to start us off, and then we'll have Tim Lydon, the Wilderness Manager with the Glacier Ranger District in Chugach National Forest. So first, let's welcome Jack Blackwell.
Well, I'd like to thank you all very much for allowing me to be here this afternoon. I am going to share my screen with you. As Paul mentioned, I'm the Vice President of Lands and Resources with Chugach Alaska Corporation, and appreciate the opportunity to be here. Let's see. Okay, great. Let's see, just can I get confirmation? Can you see my screen I'm sharing?
Yes, looks good.
Okay, great. I love this picture. Sea hunters, native sea hunters in Valdez in the early 1900s. And I think this picture really kind of illustrates how important the water and land is to Alaska natives, and for many of the reasons that the land and water was important to Alaska natives, it's equally as important to people that live in this region today. So I love this picture, though. It's a great reminder of how special this area is. In order to understand what Alaska Native Corporation is, I think it's important to briefly touch on some of the history. And there's a lot of history on this slide, but I wanted to just kind of focus on a few key points. When Alaska was acquired by the United States, the native claims had not been settled at that time. And it wasn't until 1971 that Congress passed the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act. But there were two main drivers for Congress resolving the native claims. And the first is in 1959, when Alaska became a state, it was allowed to select land for its land base. And then in the late 1960s, commercial oil was discovered on the North Slope. So really it was the state lands selections and oil that was discovered on the North Slope were key in the Native Claims Settlement Act or key drivers. And before the pipeline could be built from the North Slope to Valdez, the native claims had to be settled. So 1971, Congress passed ANCSA, and it provided land and money to Alaska Native corporations. And this map shows the 12 regional region corporations that were created, and you can see Chugach Alaska Corporation is right on the northern Gulf of Alaska. And you know, the mission of Chugach, it really has like three pillars. I think you can kind of vision it from more of a pillar structure. So there's three pillars. One is to be profitable. We're a corporation, and corporations need to generate revenue. But I also think it's important to point out that the two other items in the mission include celebration of heritage and ownership of lands. And I think that's pretty neat that that was called out in the corporation's mission. Chugach is a diverse company. We have over close to 5,000 employees throughout the world. Chugach, some of our businesses provide government contracting services. We have a number of contracts to operate military bases and services for the Department of Defense. We also are in the oil and energy business. We have All American Oil Field Company down on the Kenai. Here in Prince William Sound, the TCC company provides oil spill response. They're based in Valdez. TCC is the Titwick, Chuniga, and Chugach. Three corporations form that to provide oil spill response. And then we also recently acquired two businesses up in the interior, HVAC LLC and Alaska Integrated Services. But we have, I like this screen because it shows that we're it shows our diverse portfolio. Under ANCS, Chugach received close to 1 million acres, including 378,000 acres of full fee estate and 550,000 acres of subsurface. This is shows our region. We span from Lower Cook Inlet up the eastern Kenai Peninsula, Prince William Sound, out to Icy Bay. And in Prince William Sound, this particular slide shows our land portfolio in the Sound. Dark green is the fee simple lands where we have the surface and subsurface estate, and then the other colors are subsurface estate that we own. And I just threw in a couple extra slides to also show the area around the Copper River Delta and then out towards Icy Bay. You can see we have up in the Copper Basin, we have the Tonsina Tract as well. And then we have some land within subsurface estate within Kenai Fjords National Park. And when Chugach was first created, the focus of the corporation was in a couple of areas. And the corporation was in the fishing industry, owned some canneries in the region. But from the land's perspective, the corporation sold timber on their lands out near Icy Bay and on Montague Island. And today, probably our biggest effort from the lands department is that we work on is with our improved forest management projects. Chugach has sold carbon credit offsets under the California Cap and Trade program. We've got about 50,000 acres that we have participated in the carbon market. That's pretty exciting. We're looking at other potential opportunities to continue with this program. We also are developing a rock quarry near Port Covina on the eastern side of the Sound. And then last summer was our first summer permitting Uncruise, a small ecotourism company to operate on corporate lands on Night Island. In addition, we also issue land use permits to a number of businesses that provide big game, or I should say sport hunting services on our lands, as well as ecotourism. We also support research efforts in the region, and also sell gravel at some of our sites in a few areas in the region. I also just wanted to point out that under ANCSA, corporations were allowed to select historical sites. I'm excited to report that a couple months ago we received patent to 20 new 14H1 sites in the region. So many of you may know John Johnson, who's worked as the Vice President of Cultural Resources here at Chugach, and he's been instrumental in this effort. And so now we have close to 130 of these 14H1 sites in the region. So I also wanted to point out that we do have an issue with the subsurface and surface estates. I just want to touch on because it's pertinent right now. The intent of ANCSA was that on the surface lands where the village received the surface lands, that the regional corporations would receive the subsurface. And so together the village and regional corporations would work together to develop the mineral estate. After the Exxon Valdez oil spill, the majority of funds that were used from the trustee council, majority of those funds were used to acquire habitat from village corporations. Those lands were placed in, or I should say there were conservation easements placed on those lands. And in many cases, either the federal government or the state acquired those lands and now manages them. But, it's really kind of created a situation where the lands were acquired or placed in conservation status, but Chugach can develop the subsurface mineral estate that's the dominant estate. So that's been an issue for Chugach since shortly after the oil spill. In 2019, the Congress passed the Dingle Act, which directed the federal government to study this issue. In December of 2022, the report was released that identified or that studied the ownership and use patterns and economic impacts, social impacts, and recognized that there was an issue and a conflict with the land status, and identified accessible and economically viable federal lands that could potentially be exchanged with Chugach, and to consolidate the ownership of the surface and mineral estate. And we are currently working with the Alaska delegation on a land exchange bill, and are excited to focus on. Let's see, just wanted to, sorry about jumping around here, make sure I'm on the right slide, but I think it's important to also understand that Chugach also is part of the part of the community within the communities within this region, and just in the interest of time here, I'll try to be brief, but we like to try to work with our partners on priorities within the region. Whether it's infrastructure such as housing, broadband, transportation, energy. These are important items for the communities and throughout this region. But we like to try and partner with other organizations and partners on these important items to help with sustainable communities, and in order to help us do that, we've recently established Chugach Tribal Services, which is a nonprofit organization that helps focus on grant writing, and that's really been a great help as we look at potential projects and grant opportunities. And Chugach Tribal Services is envisioned as helping work with the local tribes, the local village corporations, and communities on important projects throughout the region. In Anchorage, where I'm located, we're working on a project to build a museum, and it's in Anchorage, and it's called Village Within a City. It's part of this concept of providing additional services in Anchorage, which is many of the people in the region come for different services and business and other things. And then just finally, I'd also like to point out we're really happy that to see the completion of this project. The Naswick building in Valdez was completed last fall. It's a 4-story, 37-unit complex that provides housing for within the community. There's long-term rentals that are leased out to groups like organizations like TCC and the hospital, and then I think roughly about half of those units are in long-term leases, and then the other are short-term available for people that need housing in Valdez. So that was a joint effort with the Titlic and Chuniga, as well as Chugach Corporation, and we're really excited to bring that online. This is an example of how we're working within the communities on, in this case, housing issue. And what this has done is it's freed up housing that would otherwise have been either housing that would otherwise be leased out to some of these businesses, or so. As you all know, housing is very limited in this region. So we're excited to see this open. It's a beautiful building in the heart of downtown Valdez. And then finally, I'd just like to leave you with my contact information. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions, or if I can do anything. And happy to take any questions if there are any.
Thanks, Jack. We'll maybe have Tim talk first, and if we have time, we'll do questions. So if you don't mind, hanging on for a few minutes. We'll have Tim Lydon coming up and talk about Forest Service. Let's give Jack a round of applause. So next up is Tim Lydon. Tim's been very instrumental in the Stewardship Foundation from the very start, and he is the wilderness manager working for the Glacier District in the Chugach National Forest. Come on up, Tim.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming online and here in the room. Lots of familiar faces. It's good to see you all. I learned a new term today from Charla. It's slide roulette because of the one of the little tech issues I had this morning. The notes I have are to a different presentation, sort of. So we're just going to roll with this. Hey, Julia. Julio is here. Okay. Second slide, please. All right. Rolled the dice. I wanted to see a map. And so we're off to a good start. So I'm going to give a brief overview of the Chugach National Forest, very brief, and then I'll focus a little time on the wilderness study area in western Prince William Sound, because that's an area with a unique designation, and it's a large part of the Sound, and it's where a lot of the recreation and tourism industry is operating. So this first slide here, let me just, oh, okay, thanks. Okay, so here's Chugach National Forest. This is a review for a lot of you, but Chugach National Forest is about 5.5 million acres, and as a Forest Service, we think about it in three geographic terms. On your looker's left there, we have the Kenai Peninsula. In the middle, of course, Prince William Sound. On the right side, the Copper River Delta, and that aligns with our three districts. We have the Seward District on the Kenai, the Girdwood District, or Glacier Ranger District, which is where we administer the western Sound, and the WSA, the Wilderness Study Area. And then on the looker's right is the Copper River, which is out of our Cordova office. And this second map is the same map, and then this ties in what Jack was saying, and it's just a really important point for anybody working, recreating, living in Prince William Sound to know whose land you're on, because I encountered a lot when I talk with folks. There's a lot of assumption that all this vast area in the Western Sound is public lands and national forest, but as Jack was just showing us, it's not. Can anybody say who are the three top land managers in Prince William Sound? Does that roll off the tongue for anybody? One of them is the Chugach National Forest. Yep, right. The native corporations, including Chugach Alaska, and then there's a third one. So, what's that? It's the state parks. So yeah, that's the three. And then so this map right here is showing in all these different colors. A lot of that's national forest, and then some of it is what Jack said, native corporation lands, and there's also state lands in there too. And some of those state lands are state parks. And so, and then as Jack said too, he just talked about, I think he said, titled the 2014 H1s had just been completed. And so this map of the land ownership is always changing, and that's what Jack was referring to. So even when you have the latest map, you got to sometimes do a little more homework. And because of that, because there's this complex land ownership pattern, and because it's hard to know, a few years ago, Chugach Regional Resources Commission and the Forest Service and the Stewardship Foundation got together, and we got the latest data, and then it's housed on the PrinceWilliamSound.org. That's the Stewardship Foundation's website. So anyhow, it's a good resource if you want to find a quick, you want a quick reference on land ownership. And then, this is the third map. Here is the same one, same map with a different layer. And then this is from the Forest Service. This is our land management prescriptions under the new forest plan, which is now 5 years old, 2020 plan. But you can see the private lands are generally gray on this one, and then those colors that you see are 8 different management area prescriptions. And all of you, I think, know that the national forests are multiple use. You can have logging and mining and visitor centers and ski areas and gravel pits and roads and campgrounds and all kinds of stuff, right? And then the Chugach National Forest is a little bit different in that we have, I think we're probably the highest percentage of roadless lands out of any national forest. And we're also very recreation based. So for instance, there isn't really a timber industry on the Chugach National Forest. So a lot of these prescriptions deal with recreation that kind of tan one is backcountry, has a lot of recreation. The I don't know what to call that color. Is that like a pomegranate? Whatever it is over on the left, on the right side there. That's it's an Anilka 501. I gotta make sure I say it right. 501B, primarily for Copper River Delta Fish and Wildlife Conservation. And then the largest land management prescription is the Wilderness Study Area, which is teal in the middle there. If you'd like to learn more about those land management prescriptions, read up about how the WSA is managed, for instance, or any of the other prescriptions. Here's the website for our forest plan, and that's where you can find all the information on that. Let's see here. And then, so yeah, from here I'll focus in a little bit on the Wilderness Study Area, and I won't spend a whole lot of time, but I'm just going to give you some of the basics. So there's a close-up, a different map of the Wilderness Study Area, and just for geography purposes, you know, on the upper right there, that's an old map, obviously, from Columbia Glaciers, all backed way up from where this map has it. But if you go from Point Fremantle between Valdez Arm and Columbia Bay and draw a line down there, Naked Island, Night Island, all the way down to Point Bainbridge or Port Bainbridge, and then on up through Nellie, Icy Bay, Harriman, College, Fiord, that's all within the Wilderness Study Area as long as it's National Forest. So it's a giant area. Does anybody remember the size of the Wilderness Study Area? The Chugach National Forest is 5 million. Yeah, I'm seeing the, it's 2 million acres, which makes it about the size of Yellowstone National Park. Is the marine waters, is that included as part of the National Forest Wilderness Study Area? I'm seeing some head shaking. No, it's not. The Wilderness Study Area only applies to the lands. And then, let's see. I think most folks are pretty familiar with the landscape out there, so I'll just breeze through this, but some highlights on that. We still have approximately 20 tidewater glaciers in the Wilderness Study Area, the western part of the Sound. So all of the tidewater glaciers in Prince William Sound are in the WSA. Northernmost part of the temperate rainforest, northern limit of yellow cedars, and hundreds of lakes and islands and habitat for fish and wildlife. And of course, with all that comes many, many opportunities that all of you are familiar with. And then just a little bit, again, I enjoy following Jack Blackwell from CAC because the content overlaps a little bit. You get some of it from the corporation standpoint and some of it from the Forest Service, but both of us are acknowledging that that the story of land ownership and management in Prince William Sound is part of some really big pieces of Alaskan history that Jack touched on, and I won't go into much detail at all. But the Wilderness Study Area is not something that the Forest Service created or that the Forest Service can change the boundaries to or delete or anything like that. That's totally up to Congress. It was created in the 1980 ANILCA, Alaska National Interest Lands Conservation Act. You can see a photo of it there. Jimmy Carter in the middle holding it before we had print on both sides, right? So it's a big, heavy document. So yeah, that Wilderness Study Area will be there as long as Congress, says it'll be there. It will never be designated as wilderness unless Congress decides that. There won't be lands released from it unless Congress decides that. So it's something that the Forest Service, just like any wilderness area, for instance, is decided by Congress. And then the management is interesting. There's not a whole lot in ANILCA about how to manage the Wilderness Study Area. Basically, Congress told the Forest Service, study that area for its potential for wilderness and get back to us within 4 years. And of course, now it's been 45 years, and Congress doesn't have to make a decision on the area, but we provided our recommendation. And actually, every time we do a forest plan revision, we provide a recommendation of how much of that area, if any, Congress is, in the agency's opinion, would designate. Here's just a very quick review of how that's gone, and I can answer questions about this later, but I just want to cruise through this. this map here kind of shows our current recommendation, which is that most of the area, 1.4 million of the 2 million acres, be designated as wilderness. But that really doesn't matter for all of our use of the area, because the entire area under our forest plan is managed as a wilderness study area. And that's kind of a funny thing. It's an interim designation, and basically we don't manage this as wilderness, but we do manage it to maintain the qualities that would make it eligible for wilderness. So that may sound like a little bit of semantics there, but there really is a difference. So what we manage the area for is basically quite simple. When you put it into words here, we maintain the existing, presently existing conditions and its potential for inclusion in the wilderness system. And it's simple words, but there's kind of a lot that can go into that. However, what the Forest Service has done is we focus on 4 qualities of the landscape, which is unmanipulated ecological systems. So we don't have a lot of dams or things that change the ecology of the area. Natural conditions, kind of some overlap there. We try our best, as we do on the rest of the forest as well, to minimize non-native species. Undeveloped, we do keep that area primarily undeveloped, and then we provide outstanding opportunities for solitude and primitive recreation. And that doesn't mean that on every acre you'll have all of those experiences, but that's our general management prescription for the area. So those are the 4 things that we focus on, and there's some overlap with wilderness there because we're managing it for its potential as wilderness. But it's really interesting reading the here. I'll kind of wrap up with this. In recent years, so in 2020 we finished our forest plan, and we really updated the language on how the area is managed because it can be confusing between a wilderness study area and wilderness. And so this presently existing character, we honed in on that term, and we created a document called the Nellie Juan-College Fiord Wilderness Study Area Existing Character Baseline Report. And so in 2020, we identified just kind of where natural conditions were at, how much development is on the landscape, where are there invasives, are there dams, like at the hatcheries, for instance, that kind of thing. So we established what that baseline is to help us focus in on all 4 of these qualities. And then in the back of it, there's a couple different appendixes, and one of them is a very brief, but I think interesting legislative history on the wilderness study area that says basically why a third of the Tongass National Forest here in Alaska was designated as official wilderness, and why a third of the Chugach was designated as a wilderness study area. Excuse me. Hello? No, just kidding. I forgot to turn off my ringer. Okay, cool. Yeah, I am too. I got a call. I got to go. Anyhow, so have that to refer to, and thanks for the opportunity. Definitely ask any questions, and welcome to the symposium. I'm excited.
Thanks, Tim.